The flashing red and blue lights painted the century-old courthouse in waves of color, as police officers surrounded every entrance before sunrise. A crowd of reporters gathered behind the barricades, their cameras fixed on one man, Marcus Hale, a homeless former U.S. Marine. Wrapped in a faded olive-green military jacket, Marcus stood quietly on the courthouse steps, with his worn backpack at his feet. His face showed exhaustion, but not fear. Mayor Richard Calloway stepped in front of the cameras with a confident smile. "Today," he announced, "our city is reclaiming this historic courthouse from an illegal trespasser who has occupied public property for months." The reporters nodded as camera shutters clicked. Marcus didn't argue. He simply looked up at the weathered stone building that had become the only place he had been able to call home. Then something unexpected happened. A court clerk hurried toward Judge Eleanor Whitmore, carrying a sealed envelope stamped, "Historical Property Records. Immediate judicial review." The judge opened it. Her calm expression disappeared. She looked directly at Marcus, then at the mayor. The courtroom fell silent. What could possibly be inside those forgotten records? If you enjoy stories where courage defeats corruption and justice always wins, subscribe and let's begin. 10 years earlier, Marcus Hale had returned home after serving multiple combat deployments with the United States Marine Corps. Like many veterans, he believed the hardest battles were behind him. He was wrong. The nightmares never truly ended. Finding steady work became difficult. Medical bills piled up. After losing both his job and apartment, Marcus slowly slipped into homelessness. Yet he refused to let bitterness define him. Every morning, he shaved using the restroom at a local community center. He volunteered at food drives whenever he could. He helped elderly neighbors carry groceries. He never begged. He simply tried to survive with dignity. Most people passed him without a second glance. Few knew the medals packed carefully inside his old backpack. Fewer still knew the sacrifices behind them. One rainy evening, Marcus wandered into the abandoned Jefferson County Historic Courthouse. The massive stone building had been empty for years. Broken windows let cold wind whistle through the halls. Dust covered every courtroom. Rain leaked through sections of the roof. Most people saw an abandoned building. Marcus saw shelter, but he also saw history. Instead of simply sleeping there, he began cleaning. He swept decades of dust from the marble floors. He removed broken glass from the entrances. He carefully boarded damaged windows using discarded lumber. He collected trash, left behind by vandals. Without realizing it, the former Marine began protecting one of the city's oldest landmarks. Weeks turned into months. Neighbors walking nearby noticed something unusual. The courthouse looked alive again. The overgrown lawn was trimmed. The American flagpole had been repaired. Flowers began appearing beside the front entrance. No one knew who was responsible. Until one morning, local schoolteacher Emily Sanders spotted Marcus carefully polishing the courthouse's bronze memorial plaque, honoring veterans from previous wars. "You've been doing all this?" she asked softly. Marcus smiled. "It deserves better than being forgotten." Emily looked around the beautifully cleaned entrance. "So do you." Word quietly spread through the neighborhood. Some residents began bringing Marcus warm meals. Others donated cleaning supplies. A retired carpenter repaired broken doors. An electrician volunteered to make the building safer. For the first time in years, the courthouse wasn't just an abandoned structure. It had become a symbol of hope. But not everyone welcomed the transformation. At City Hall, Mayor Richard Calloway viewed the growing public attention differently. The courthouse had long been part of a profitable redevelopment proposal. Luxury apartments, retail shops, political donors stood to benefit. Marcus's growing popularity threatened those plans. During a private meeting, the mayor frowned as photographs of the restored courthouse were projected onto a screen. "People are praising a homeless man," he said coldly. "They're asking why he protected the building while the city ignored it." City Attorney Daniel Brooks adjusted his glasses. "We can remove him." "How?" "We'll sue him for trespassing, unlawful occupation, and unauthorized alteration of government property." The mayor smiled. "Do it." Within days, legal notices appeared on the courthouse doors. Television stations repeated the city's version of events. Headlines called Marcus an illegal squatter, occupying taxpayer property. Few reporters asked why the building had been abandoned for nearly 20 years. Fewer asked who had actually preserved it. Marcus received the lawsuit without anger. He quietly folded the papers and placed them inside his backpack beside his Marine Corps medals. "If they want their day in court," he whispered, "I'll be there." What Marcus didn't know was that someone else had begun asking dangerous questions. Across town, local historian Olivia Carter was reviewing old county archives for an unrelated preservation project. One faded map caught her attention. The ownership records for the courthouse didn't match. The dates were inconsistent. The signatures were incomplete. And one missing document appeared to have vanished from the public record decades earlier. Olivia leaned back in her chair. This can't be right. She had no idea that the missing document she was about to search for would change Marcus Hale's life and expose one of the city's biggest secrets. Olivia Carter spent the next 3 days buried in dusty archives beneath the county records office. Most of the files had not been opened in decades. Just as she was about to give up, she noticed a thin leather ledger hidden behind a row of oversized survey books. Inside was a yellowed deed dated more than a century earlier. Her heart raced. Attached to it was the original trust agreement for the courthouse. The final page revealed something astonishing. The courthouse had never legally become city property. Instead, it had been placed into a permanent Veterans Preservation Trust by its original owner, Civil War Colonel Nathaniel Harper. The trust stated that if the building was ever abandoned by local authorities, custody would pass to a qualified military veteran who restored and protected it until a court determined permanent ownership. Olivia read the clause twice. There was no mistake. Marcus Hale met every requirement. She immediately contacted veteran advocate Samuel Reed. "If these records are authentic," Samuel said, "this lawsuit is about to become something the city never expected." The courtroom was overflowing on the morning of the hearing. Television cameras lined the back wall. Mayor Richard Calloway sat confidently beside City Attorney Daniel Brooks. Marcus quietly took his seat, with Samuel Reed beside him. Judge Eleanor Whitmore entered the courtroom. "We are here to hear the City of Jefferson versus Marcus Hale." Daniel Brooks stood first. "Your Honor, the defendant illegally occupied public property for several months without authorization." He displayed photographs of Marcus sleeping inside the courthouse. "This is a clear case of trespassing." The mayor nodded proudly. Then Samuel Reed slowly rose. "Your Honor, before this court proceeds, the defense requests permission to introduce newly discovered historical evidence." Olivia carried a weathered wooden box to the witness stand. Inside rested the original deed. The courtroom leaned forward. Judge Whitmore carefully examined the seal. "This appears authentic." "It is," Olivia replied. "Verified by the State Historical Archives." The courtroom became silent. Olivia explained how the courthouse had been entrusted to veterans generations earlier, and how the city had never completed the legal transfer required to claim ownership. Daniel Brooks immediately objected. "These documents are irrelevant." Judge Whitmore looked directly at him. "If these records are genuine, counsel, they are the most relevant evidence presented today." The objection was denied. City officials scrambled. Additional records were ordered. Survey maps, tax ledgers, court filings. One by one, every document supported Olivia's discovery. Even worse for the city, financial reports revealed millions of dollars allocated over decades for courthouse maintenance that had never been spent. Gasps filled the courtroom. The mayor's confident smile disappeared. Judge Whitmore turned toward him. "Mayor Calloway, can you explain why public funds were collected for maintaining a building your city may not have legally owned?" The mayor struggled to answer. I was unaware of these historical issues." The judge's expression remained unchanged. "That is not the answer I asked for." The silence that followed was louder than any argument. Outside the courthouse, news spread rapidly. Residents gathered with American flags. Veterans from across the county arrived to support Marcus. Many had tears in their eyes. For years, they had watched one of their own be ignored. Now they watched him stand with quiet dignity against an entire city government. After hours of testimony, Judge Whitmore returned with her decision. Everyone stood. She looked around the packed courtroom before speaking. This case began as a simple allegation of trespassing. She paused. It has become something far greater. She held up the original deed. The evidence clearly establishes that the city of Jefferson never completed the legal process necessary to obtain ownership of this courthouse. Daniel Brooks lowered his head. The mayor stared at the floor. The court further finds, the judge continued, that Marcus Hale not only preserved this historic property, but fulfilled every condition established by the original Veterans Trust. Marcus looked stunned. Judge Whitmore smiled gently. Therefore, this court dismisses all claims against Mr. Hale. A murmur spread through the courtroom. She continued. Furthermore, under the authority granted by the original trust agreement, and supported by applicable state property law, legal ownership of the Jefferson Historic Courthouse is awarded to Marcus Hale. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Then applause erupted throughout the courtroom. Several veterans saluted Marcus. Others wiped away tears. Marcus himself remained frozen. After everything he had lost, he could barely believe what he had just heard. Judge Whitmore looked toward him, one final time. Mr. Hale, she said warmly, this building was saved because one man refused to abandon it. Marcus quietly answered, I only gave it the respect it deserved. Months later, the courthouse looked completely different. The cracked windows had been restored. The marble floors shined once again. The old courtrooms had become counseling offices, classrooms, legal aid centers, and temporary housing for struggling veterans. Above the entrance, a new bronze plaque read, Harper Veterans Community Center, restored by those who never stop serving. Every visitor who walked through its doors learned Marcus Hale's story, not because he wanted recognition, but because his journey reminded people that dignity cannot be measured by wealth, appearance, or circumstance. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the very one who protects what others have forgotten. As the American flag waved proudly above the restored courthouse, Marcus stood quietly on the front steps, watching veterans and their families walk inside with hope instead of fear. For the first time in many years, he wasn't simply surviving. He was finally home.